helping us out here tonight. So, Andrea, welcome. Let's all give her a nice round of applause.
Thank you so much, and it's great to be here this afternoon. And first of all, I'm an usher too, so that makes it even perfect. You see, I'm in uniform already. So everything I'm going to be talking about today is common sense. It's just not always common practice. Is this on? No. You can't hear me? Can't now? Can you hear me? Okay, great. All right. So I have three questions to ask everybody. First of all, by a show of hands, how many people in here besides me love the Sarasota Orchestra? Okay, great. Now, second question, by how many would agree with me that customer service is not a department, it's everyone's job? Okay, great. And the third question, am I correct in assuming that I'm standing in front of a very savvy and sophisticated group of ambassadors, friends, ushers, and all people who love the orchestra? Correct? Absolutely. Okay, we can leave now. So the point is, everything we're talking about is about customer service, customer relations, and the fact is we have opportunities to touch people every single day. I always say if you take away one tip, one idea, or more importantly, one aha, and you say, you know, I know this because everyone in this room, whether you're working now professionally or in the past, you've all been professionals. So we all notice when we get customer service that isn't quite up to par. How many times have we had that? Have any of us? Absolutely. And you probably know this statistic that 96% of people who have bad customer service don't complain. They just go away. But who do they tell? Everyone. Everyone. By the way, statistically, do you think people always tell people when they've had great service? No, because we almost expect it. So when we give somebody great service, they want to come back and become our best friends. Isn't that true in many different ways? So what I've done is for our short time, and somebody once told me that a good presentation should be like a mini skirt, brief yet cover the subject. So what I hope to do, I know. So what I hope in the time that we have, I actually prepared a handout, and the handout is just reminders. And for our sakes, when I talk about customer, even it's everybody who walks in the door. Isn't it true? And many of us, I know, when I'm looking right here, and I know you used to work at Kraft. Am I right? Exactly. And besides having external customers, you also had internal customers. Isn't that true? So every department, everybody that we interact with, and it's not just when people walk in to the auditorium and we're, at work, but it's everywhere we go in the community. And I'm originally from Illinois, but I spent 38 years in New York City. So I consider that my home also. And when I moved down to Sarasota, I immediately got involved in a lot of different organizations and different venues because I wanted to be able to get involved. More times than often, people will stop me and they'll say, you look familiar. Has that ever happened to anyone? They'll say, you look familiar. And I'll usually say, oh, let's see, where could that be from? And I'll say, maybe it's from the orchestra. And they'll be, that's maybe it is. That's a great conversation starter. Isn't it true? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that all around the community you have opportunities to do that. Because as we all know, there are so many different venues for people to choose from. And I read a statistic not too long ago that I actually put in a little newsletter that I send out every week. And it talks about the fact that when you meet people and when you welcome them into whatever situation it is, that people will form in 7 seconds, they will form 11 different impressions about us. 7 seconds. Now, is it fair? Is it always true? Absolutely not. But what do you think some of the impressions that people form of us when they first meet us? We haven't even opened our mouth yet. They've just said hello or something. Any idea? What? Our appearance is one. And it's their perception of what we look like, right? Our appearance is one thing. A smile, absolutely right. So we'll talk a little bit about that. It'll be how we engage with them. Are we open and are we friendly in their mind? And that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but that beginning opening, if you will. attractiveness in their mind. Remember, that could just be what they think. How many times have we ever met somebody, by the way, that you immediately, they walk into the room and you don't like them? Has that ever happened? They haven't even opened their mouth yet. Has that ever happened to any of us? It has. I mean, it has. But it's human nature. But what happens? And then you get to know them, and what happens? You usually start to like them. Maybe not so all the time. But the idea is we form these perceptions. So one of the things is they also is that person credible? Do we believe them? Are they professional? Are they helpful? And those are the kinds of things that they think about immediately. We've all done this. Think about that the next time you run into somebody. And then they form 3 different thoughts about us. They either dislike us, they're indifferent, or they love us. So what we want, of course, when they come in, is we want people to connect with us and to like us, because every single one of us is an ambassador of the orchestra everywhere that we go. So I took the word customer, and I made this acronym out of it. I'm going to ask you to help me along with it, different words and different things that come up. And how many of us have these moments of truth? And when I call moments of truth, you have all these different opportunities, and then you've had service that maybe wasn't so great. So, for example, how many of us have ever said, I'm never going to fly, and you fill in the blanks of that airline? Has that ever happened? Or I'm never going to go, you fill in the blanks. Now, I was one of the lucky people that got caught up in Delta's challenge on July 8th. So I had the luxury of staying in the Atlanta airport for 7 hours overnight. I'm a fairly frequent flyer on Delta. In the past, I had really received nothing from them. Since I've been back, they can't stop falling over themselves for me. Isn't it true? I just want to see if it's consistent, because that's one of the first things when we think about C. What's the consistency, right? Because what's the first thing that you think of when you think of the C in customer? What do we have the opportunity to do every time somebody walks in, whatever our position is or wherever we connect with them? Welcome them, right? To smile, absolutely, to connect with them, right? So we want to connect and create some sort of a connection in that short window of time that we have. And we also want to communicate with them. And we all know this now, that there are 4 generations that will come to the orchestra. We have actually 5 when you think about the youngsters that are out coming now. But you have the millennials, you have Generation X, baby boomers, and traditionalists. And we have all of them. And guess what? Just like in the workplace, everyone communicates a little bit differently. So we almost have to figure out in that short window of time, how did they connect with us? And we have to just remember, one thing that's universal is the way we approach people, a smile, a thought, and not take anything personally. How many of us have ever done that in the past, perhaps in our business world or something like that? Maybe someone didn't connect with us the same way that we would have thought, but it's just having that attitude, if you will. So I think about it's also cultivation. We have an opportunity to cultivate people when they come in, just in that short interaction that they have with us or throughout the evening or anything that we're doing, because they meet us, they see us, and their perception of us cultivates the fact that they may decide to even come back more and more to the orchestra. And I go back to the word consistency, because we've all seen people who are friendly at certain times, but then that aren't always friendly at other times. Has anyone ever had that experience besides me? Absolutely. I was in Nova Scotia a few weeks ago, and I was on this tour, and we had stopped at one particular inn. And it was amazing. We drove up to the inn, and the owner came onto the bus before we even checked into our rooms. And he was so excited to welcome us to his inn, and he was talking about it and how, I thought, wow, this is going to be great. Well, that's where it ended, because what happened is the next 2 days, every time we would walk through the lobby and he would be sitting at the desk, he never looked up. And if he did look up, it was almost like, what? I mean, I thought, that's an interesting way to greet a guest. And always had that surly attitude on his face. I had a problem with my room because this was an old inn. But what they had, remember keys that you used to open a door? Keys, like no cards, the keys. So my key to my room didn't work. And my friends tried to open it. No one could open it. So I had to have the owner come over. And he I said to him, I'm really sorry. He made it look like it was my fault. He said, all you have to do is turn it. Well, he was able to turn it. Nobody else was able to turn it. Anyway, I said, no problem. It continued like that for the next day and a half that we were there. The only reason I'm telling you this is because when we left, guess what? He came back on the bus and he was like, it was wonderful having all of you here. He said, what I'd love for you to do is go to TripAdvisor and write a review. Well, I was thinking of writing a review, which I didn't, by the way, but it wasn't going to be something for TripAdvisor that he would have wanted. But the idea is consistency, isn't it true? We know that when people were in the workplace, that as soon as you walk through the offices or what that was, you were on. But we have the opportunity as ambassadors here, and like I say, we're all ambassadors, friends, ushers, whatever our jobs are for the orchestra, we're all ambassadors, but we have that opportunity everywhere we go in Sarasota. Isn't it true? So true. U, what do you think the U might stand for in customer? I know this is an English-speaking group, correct? I just say that as a joke because I have traveled so many places and sometimes I can't always say that. What do you think the U stands for? Understanding, absolutely right. Did anyone ever read Stephen Covey's book that was written in 1989? It was on the bestseller, still on it for years, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the things that he would talk about is seek first to understand and then to be understood. Absolutely, because very often, somebody might say something or we want to jump in with the solution, but we need to first understand where they're coming from. So that happens all the time. And a lot of times as ushers and as friends, we have to think on our feet quickly, right? Time is of the essence and things happen. Another U, any idea what the other U might stand for in customer? Unique. If we think about it, every single person who walks in is unique. And I also think about the fact that every single person who walks in has a universe. I've written these books on networking skills, so I look at everybody that you meet is somebody that when you have great experience, you could refer them in your own universe and get them interested, specifically people who may not even be aware of all the things that the orchestra provides and just the opportunities. I mean, it's amazing to me because I'm involved in Chamber of Commerce, for example, and the Rotary Club in Sarasota also. You can tell I joined when I came here. But the idea is I've asked many of my other club members, have you ever gone to the orchestra? And it's amazing how few people who've lived here for a while. Has anyone else ever run into that before? And what an opportunity with all the different venues. So another thing I've gotten to the habit of doing, and I'm sure you do this too sometimes, I'll pick up certain things like a brochure or just like something small that I'll have with me, like in my backpack or in my purse. I'll say, you know what, you ought to go to the website or you ought to go over there sometime. And just, if you've never been, take the opportunity. So I also think about the word universe when we think about that. Now we're down to the letter. What's the next letter? S, thank you. I knew it. I just wanted to test. Okay. So what do you think the S might stand for? What? First I heard sensitivity. Okay, that's a very good one. And when you say sensitivity, you mean being sensitive to the other person. Yes? Absolutely. And then we heard smile. What? Satisfaction. Absolutely right. You want them to be satisfied just as we both want to be. And don't you feel better sometimes when you know someone else has had a great experience? And that's our goal, is to make their experience to be the best. There's been a lot of research done on smiling, because I heard somebody say smile. And research on Google, believe it, our trusty place to go, but there are over 55,000 different, Google, what do you call it, the reports, that come up every time that you write the word smile. And I thought, how could it be that much about that? But there's research that proves that when you smile at somebody with a sincere, friendly, open, and authentic smile, you become, in somebody else's mind, more attractive, more approachable, and more confident and smarter. Who wouldn't want that, right? I know. So it's not bad. Now, I created something that I found. I did a little research, and the word smize. Did anyone ever hear of the word smize? No. Smile with your eyes. So if you think about that, How many of us have ever gone, like we watched last night on the Emmys or on the Oscars, they have the red carpet. Have you ever seen when they flash a smile? That's not what we're talking about, because a lot of those are that kind of phony smile, but the smile kind of like greeting an old friend. And some of us who've been ushers for a while and friends, we see people when they come back, it's like, what an opportunity to say hi to them again. Isn't that true? So it's just having that open expression. And I used to carry, and I still do in my office, my apartment here, is I have mirrors all over. How many of us, when we're on the telephone, and I think our generation, and I put ourselves in that same generation, is we're on the telephone. True? Sometimes. Anybody still on the phone? Not as many people. It's amazing. Remember the phone? I know now. I mean, we all carry that device. And when I work at Baruch College or Pace University in New York a lot, and I work with specifically millennials, and I'll ask them, what are different ways that you can communicate and connect with different people? And usually they'll say text, email, Facebook, social media of some sort, LinkedIn. I use all those, but I'll say, what was the original reason that this device is in our hand? To speak. So we've gotten away from that. Isn't that true? Unfortunately. So the idea is be having that conversation, really connecting with people. So we know that. So all these different things, we want to also, so we know smiles is like smiling with your eyes, just like you can tell when somebody greets you that's not phony, right? And we all know this too. Have you ever had somebody look at you and they look over your head or around you? Or especially when people come in, they can't always read maybe what their ticket says, or they can't read something and they need help. It's just that another opportunity. Again, common sense things that we're talking about, all refreshers, all things that I know everyone in this room is doing all the time. But you never know. It's just like you might say, oh, yeah, that's a good reminder to something that I need to think about. We all have our own system. Isn't that true? There are 4 different personality styles that are in this room. And we're not going to go through like Myers-Briggs or any of those types of DISC programs. However, some of us are very bottom line, get to the point. Other people are a little bit more analytical. Some of us are expressive, and some of us are more amiable. However, when we have anybody walk in that we greet or that we're helping, we have to almost immediately do an observation and flash into their style. Isn't that true? And we just have to do it in a very quick amount of time. We have our own style. We learn a lot of things. We also, as we know, how do people usually know that we're the people to go to when they need help at the orchestra? I'm in uniform sort of today. Have you noticed that I decided to come in our white and black almost? So the idea is people know, so they know that we are there to help them. Now, we're not going to wear white and black all the time in the community, but again, the things I'm talking about are the same things you do? Right, exactly. It's easy. Right, not all the time, but I know. But people will say, but people sometimes remember, oh, yeah, I saw that if I run into someone, they'll say you're wearing your orchestra uniform. But the idea is, again, simple things go a long way, isn't it? This is all simple. I believe in the KISS principle. You've heard that before. Keep it simple, sweetheart. Yeah, I changed that last one. Okay, exactly. All right. So T, what do you think the T might stand for in the word customer? What? Trust. You have trust. And it takes a while to develop that trust. Isn't that true? However, people are trusting in the fact that they want to come and have a great experience when they come to the orchestra, right? So we want to develop that. What else do you think it might mean? What? Thoughtful, being thoughtful, which is very key because, again, we talked about those moments of truth. And sometimes you hear things that people say and you engage them in conversation. And I was actually thinking so many times we have an opportunity to do something just based on that little thought that we heard someone say. Maybe they're coming here for their anniversary, or maybe they're coming here for their birthday or something like that. And if we hear that, it's a perfect opportunity maybe to even remember that and then tell Natalia and say, that person's coming, and find out if that person comes often, or maybe an opportunity to write them a note and say, thank you for sharing that specific event in your life at the concert, or something to that idea. I was even thinking that it might be fun. I was doing some research on little tiny pens, the tiny ones that we can put in our pocket or something, and then carrying an index card with us, just so when somebody says, "Oh, I'm here tonight because I'm new to Sarasota, or I'm visiting, or I used to go to the concerts somewhere else and now I'm coming here." Just little reminders. I'm not saying that we all have to become marketing people right away, but it's just things that we could also share that with Jim or any of the people from the Friends, correct? Or certainly with Natalia, different things like that. Does that make sense sometimes? Also, it's thinking on our feet. True? Because we know we all have a set job, and I know I love my job as the program distributor. I hope you could keep that from me, Natalia, because that is that opportunity that you get to say hello to people, connect with them in that short amount of time, and it's nice. You get to help them where they're going to their seat, but it's just that little window of opportunity, if you will. So we have to think on our feet, because sometimes things can go off balance. Isn't it true? Someone might come in and we have to help them to their seat, or something could happen. But we know that the other thing is time is of the essence, because we don't have a lot of time. Because when they walk in and the doors open, from then until the lights go down, we have to make sure things keep moving in good order. So we know that we always have Natalia with her walkie-talkie on, right? And we have the head ushers, and people are there to help us. So that's key with all these different things. So it's thinking on our feet. Time is of the essence. When we go back to thinking about the external way that we connect with people, and body language, and the smile, and all those different things, I'm sure you're all aware of the fact that 55% of our communication is visual. Well, statistics tell us that when you walk into a room, a meeting, any kind of situation, people, again, just judge us by the way we look. True? And that doesn't mean just the way we're dressed, but our appearance, our eye contact, our smile, things that for example, that 38% is our tone of voice. And how important is our tone of voice when we think about that? Again, we all know this, but sometimes, again, now with other modes of communication, people don't always understand that. But we all know this. For example, you can say a lot in one sentence without ever changing, too much. For example, can I have 4 volunteers? All you have to do is say one sentence. It's not hard. 1 volunteer. All right, 1, 2. Oh, good. I got 3, 4. Okay, good. So you don't look. You stood up. That's so nice of you. Now I'm going to give you all a word. Okay. So Jim, I, and then your word will be never, said, that. Okay. Now what I'm going to ask each person to do is to say the whole sentence. Only emphasize your particular word. Okay. Let's give them a round of applause, okay? You know what I have to tell you? You are the smartest group, because I have to tell you, I work in corporations and I have this exercise, and I'll specifically explain it like I did to you. And the first person, if their word was I, like when Jim said, they'll just go I. And then the next person will go never. And I said, "Was that the instructions?" And everyone says no, but no one interrupted, right? So thank you. What the reason for that is one sentence, 4 different meanings. True? So a lot of times, remember how we can tell, are you asking me that? Or are you telling me that? Things like this that are so simple, yet people will take a lot of that and they'll, change their whole perception, which is why we also have to think about, we have to listen. Isn't that true? Listening is key. So everyone do me a favor real fast. Make a fist. Now quickly put your fist on your chin. Okay, is that everyone's chin? That's right. I know you. Everybody's watching, right? So actions speak. I do know the difference. I know somebody once said the poor lady doesn't know the difference between her chin and her cheek. I do. But why do I say that? Because we have such an opportunity when we're talking to people, connecting with them, especially our goal is to be friendly and create a wonderful experience for everyone who comes in. Isn't that true? And while we're having a good time too, because we get the benefit of also watching the orchestra and having that wonderful more enrichment in our lives. But just the fact of listening. And I have a sign in my office that says the most successful people, if examined, have teeth marks on their tongue. Because sometimes, have you ever wanted to say something but you don't? You just listen. And it's like talk less and listen more. And I know that we know this in all aspects of our life, but specifically I've been able to put this into effect also in my job as an usher and just everywhere because you listen to people. Listen, using all the letters. Any idea what that is? Who said silent? Exactly, right? Which is what our voice has. You know that little voice that we talk to all the time, all day long and all night? You know that one, the one that you're talking to now. And that's the one. So sometimes, we want to talk, but if we really listen and turn down that, what I call the rattling monkeys, you learn a lot about somebody else, and you learn a lot about their experience. But we know that actions speak louder than words, so a lot of times you can tell if somebody is uncomfortable. Isn't that true? And it's an opportunity to walk over if somebody's getting in their seat and they maybe don't feel comfortable. People want to talk. They love to talk about who more than anybody else. Absolutely. I used to be a Dale Carnegie instructor. Did anyone ever read his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People? So in my corporate life, when I was a magazine publisher, before I became a consultant, I was a Dale Carnegie instructor at night. And I go back and read his book every year. It's been like 28 years now. And every time I read it, I pick up something new. Isn't it true? It's like basic, simple skills that we're talking about that are just about being good human relations when we think about it. But it's making someone else feel like they had a perfect and wonderful experience just by going. So can you think of anything else that stands for T? What? Thank them. Absolutely right. What an opportunity to thank somebody. And we have that all the time. Thank them for, how many of us say to somebody when they leave, thank you for coming. Please come back. Perfect thing, right? And thank you, by the way, the two words, you'd think they were overused and used all the time. There's also been research that people don't say thank you enough. And I say that's imperfect. I have a little habit that I do. I write. I'm still write handwritten notes. Does anybody ever do that? Good. Such wonderful to see everybody here who does that, because the post office tells us that only 4% of our mail is handwritten and personal. And isn't that something? 4%. Most of the other mail is not. It's called something that starts with a J, ends with a K. But I feel very sad when I hear that, because I used to be a magazine publisher for a magazine called Target Marketing. So it wasn't junk if it was targeted toward the person. Okay? But I still write notes, handwritten notes. And we thought about the fact that those are the things why we want to listen to the people that we talk to all the time. We hear something, a special date, an experience, why they're there, or maybe they're interested perhaps in becoming a friend. I remember when I first moved here, I got right on the flea market committee, right? That's right. Remember? I know, and it was something I hadn't even lived. I was still living in New York, but I was sort of back and forth, and it was interesting because I remember with all the different other venues that we go to, and isn't it true people have a choice where they're going to go and where they're going to spend their time. I go to everything. However, I'm only an usher here because I remember my first time that I came for usher training. Remember I reached out to you, Natalia, and I was so excited when I came. And then, you know what happened? Talk about the fact that we run into people in all situations. I was at my yoga class not too long afterwards, and who walks in? Natalia. And I was so excited. I didn't know if she remembered me or anything, remember? And then we started talking, and what a wonderful thing. And then we found out just, like a week or two ago, wasn't it true? There's a new owner at the studio, and they were wondering how they knew each other. And, of course, what happened? It was because their sons are youth orchestra. So isn't that amazing? So you never know, which makes it, I think everywhere I go, and I'm saying that if we all adopted that, isn't that something? Because it's true, people go to everything, and I know that I've even seen you. You're in the opera too, aren't you? I've seen you up on stage, absolutely. So we go to all kinds of things, but the idea is we all have such a love for the orchestra, so it's a perfect opportunity just to have other people be interested. I call those moments of truth, and those things you never know, and people remember. I'm remembering something, AT&T, and I'll tell you why I use them for an example. Usually when we think of AT&T, what do we think? Problems or something, right? Or something. But I have been a long-time AT&T subscriber, and never did this ever happen in New York. But here, whenever I go to the office right on Bee Ridge, well, they're very nice. At the end of your service call with them, they walk you to the door. Now, it sounds like nothing, right? It sounds like the simplest thing in the world. I've been now, like I told all of you, right? I told friends of mine in New York last week. I was telling somebody, one of my clients, why am I doing this for AT&T, right? I mean, but the idea is it was something that was memorable. And it's those little tiny things that people love, just those little things. So when I think about, like with all of us, what are some of those little things that we can do to create a wonderful, exciting experience for everybody who walks in? Sometimes it's people coming with their children for the first time, and they're just learning about music, true? Or it's somebody who's coming back, and maybe they're a musician and they play. Different things like that. So it's just different reminders at all time. And so we've gotten to O, right? What do you think the O stands for? What? Outgoing. Okay. Now, how many people in here would say that they're outgoing? Some of us, right? How many of us would say we're more introverted? You know, it's funny. I'm an introvert. I'm a learned extrovert. So I really am. So again, it doesn't mean that we have to be the life of the party, but it could just be that we extend, or maybe say be more proactive, right? Take the initiative when somebody walks in. What else do you think the O might stand for? What? Open body language. You're absolutely right. And you know, it's true. I do a lot of work in that area of body language. And as we know, how do you think your hands should be when you shake? If you ever have the opportunity to shake somebody's hand, right? We want to give a firm handshake. Have you ever had the fish handshake? Yeah, we know that one, or when they break your hand. Right. But there's something about having your palms being up. And I learned that, and it's very true. Again, it's psychological. But when you're talking to somebody and your hands are up or your palms are up, it's more welcoming. So having that open approach, that connection. We've been talking quite a bit about the whole idea of being friendly. And I always say it takes a sec, S-E-C, when you think about it, to smile, have eye contact, and offer a comment. Like, thank you for coming, or have a great evening, or hope to see you again soon. Things like that take no time but mean a lot to somebody, because you never know what kind of day they've just had. True? And that's the thing, because people come here usually because they want to have enjoyment. True? We all do. So whatever's been happening in their day, we want to hopefully turn that around in the time that we have. Okay. We've talked about taking ownership, and every touch is that opportunity to connect with them a little bit more. You've probably heard that line, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Have you ever heard that line before? It was taken from, I think, Mary Kay, you know, the queen of cosmetics many years ago. And she talked about that, and it really is true. So again, we've talked about the fact of being genuine. They did a study recently, and when I think about the fact that really, how do you really relate to people? And it was done at a bank. Okay, and I actually took part in this study. It was a long time ago, but I thought how relevant it was. And the reason I did a study is this customer service with some of the tellers wasn't as high as they would have liked with some of their clients. Many of the tellers were millennial age, you know, so very young. So they weren't able to sometimes relate to sometimes the audience that would be coming in. So you know what they did? They actually taped everyone's fingers together with tape. And why did they do that? Any idea? They wanted them to experience what it was like to try to pick up change or money, because a lot of the people who might be coming, you know, were a little bit older than they were. And so they maybe couldn't always pick up. That was one thing. The other thing they did is they gave them all glasses, and they put Vaseline in the glasses. So it was very blurry. Now, I got to tell you all, sometimes that could be me anyway, so I'm always with my glasses. But how many times does somebody maybe say, I can't see what my ticket says, or I can't read it, or whatever? And maybe they have their glasses, but they don't want to bring them out or something like that. So what an opportunity for us. Again, it's just simple things, turn everybody who comes into what I call a raving fan, to have them keep coming back over and over again. And, you know, even as a friend, you know, as a friend, I joined because I'm an usher, but then I said, let me renew to become a friend again. So it's those soft touches you send out when we get an email, right, in the mail, or something about another opportunity where people can come. And how many of us ever invite our friends to come to any of those types of things, where you'll have like a conversation with one of the musicians or something? It's a perfect opportunity to create interest. Isn't that true? All the time. Okay, what are we down to? What letter? M. So what do you think the M stands for? What? Memory. So you got to, and you know, sometimes if we try to rely on our own memory, it can be hard, which is why I write everything down. Is anyone like me? I say that no matter how sharp your mind is, it's still weaker than the palest ink. So if you can write things down, which is why I'm always carrying something to write down. If I want to remember someone, and by the way, names. How many of us, when somebody walks in, we sometimes, you'll connect with them, maybe at the intermission or something like that, but someone will tell you their name. They are so impressed if we remember their name when they leave. Does that ever happen to any of us? It's true. How many of us in here would say we're good at remembering names? This works in any part of our life. Some of us, yes. What's your secret? And it's a good gift, right? I always say 3 things: impression, repetition, association. So when you meet somebody, you connect with them, and that's something we've been talking about. We all do that, but you ask them their name, and I always repeat their name back one time. If you say it too many times, it becomes a distraction, of course, right? But repeat it back once, and then for some sort of association. I also do something. I ask people, how do you spell your name? Now, we don't always have a time to do this when people are walking in. I'm not going to hold up, the orchestra. But I'm just saying, remember, in the community, this is where it really works beautifully. And I will ask somebody, how do you spell your name? And just the other night, I was at something at Michael's on East, and I met someone. Her name is Renee. She spells it Renea. I have a client named Scott, 1 T. And whenever I email him, he always says to me in the course of a day, he says, it never fails, Andrea. You're the only person that writes my name the way my mother and father gave me my name, with 1 T. People remember that. So if we remember that, if we remember somebody's name and you see them in the community, you're like, oh, Sandy, it's great to see you. Haven't seen you for a while. Yes, we met at the orchestra. What does that do to somebody? Makes us feel important, right? Again, with sincerity. Simple things that we all do, but maybe not everyone does it out there. Yes?
There's another trick to that.
Tell me.
They said, oh, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. Said, oh, it's Judy. No, I know that, but what's your last name?
Oh, very good. That's very good. That's very. So, did you hear what she said? Would you tell everyone what you just said? They couldn't hear you.
Well, you meet somebody and I said, excuse me, but I can't remember your name. And you said, well, it's Judy. No, I remember that. Just your last name, please.
Very good. That's a very good one. Absolutely. I know that you had your hand up.
Just going to ask.
To repeat, right? I also know that somebody once said to me, what happens if you forget somebody's name? And, I'll sometimes say, forgive me, please tell me your name again. To this day, no one's ever said, guess what it is. They'll tell you, right? So the idea, it's okay to ask, but then what I do is I write it down. So these are these like little touches, because when you think about the fact, we're the front line, we're the ambassadors. I always go back to saying that because that's what our job is. And we have all these different ways that we want to add value to someone's experience. Isn't that true? So when we think about it, we're marketing people too. In the fact, I told you about AT&T. I'll tell you one other quick story. One of my first clients in New York City was the Animal Medical Center. And for anybody who knows, that was one of the large hospitals in New York. The actual clients could not talk, correct? They were all the pets. So we worked a lot with all the pet owners. And in the one of the departments, I always worked with them because any time that anyone lost a pet, they were very, very considerate and sensitive to the fact of reaching out and sending, specifically on the passing, the anniversary of the passing, they would send a card, make a phone call, they would do this. And with sincerity, that was key, because I remember the key social worker, and I talked about this a lot. And one time, I'll never forget, someone got a card and a call, and this particular man was so touched that he called back like 2 days later, and he was feeling so sad because no one had remembered. And he made, at that day, a $500,000 gift. Now, I'm not going to say that's going to happen all the time, and that's not why they did it, but the reality was You know what? But it's just how many times, and this is something that's amazing, how many times when people do come and contribute and go that they don't always get thanked, right? So our opportunity is the fact we can just say thank you to everyone, right? So you can never say thank you too many times. So I always think about that story and about how much it meant to me specifically when they said that. Down to the E. What do you think the E might stand for? What? Enjoy. You want people to enjoy, right? Just like we want to enjoy. Absolutely right. It's about that. Exactly having that enjoyment. Okay? Yes. Absolutely. Empathy. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. Isn't it true? Think about them. You know, sometimes it's not our fault, but it's our problem. Isn't it true? I think I heard Gordon once say that. Am I right? Absolutely. And it's about the fact that we have to fix that problem, whatever it is. And we have that opportunity because if we don't have the answer, we know that Natalia's not too far away, right? And so we can get the answer. But we have to be empathetic. And that's such a key thing. It's like switching sometimes personality styles, understanding that. Another E is energy. What? Enthusiasm is great, absolutely. As we all know, the last 4 letters of the word enthusiasm are what? IASM. So it's like I'm sold myself. So it's like we're sold on the orchestra. We have to, and again, enthusiasm is contagious, just like energy is contagious. So when people see us and that we're upbeat and personable and just being open, again, no matter what our style is, it's just being open. We're all there to, as we said, enjoy ourselves and have a good time. And to make the experience as great as it possibly can for the people who come. I always say that. What kind of experience? Because this is really an experience when people come. And sometimes people come and they haven't even been. And they're like, wow, this is fantastic. So it's the idea is to start, doing this all the time. Anything else you can think about for the E? What? Absolutely right. Eye contact, connect with the people's eyes. And we have that opportunity, whatever our job is as ushers and as ambassadors. I always think as ushers because I know that when we go through everybody's job, we all have that connection, that opportunity to connect with people, our eye contact, and really make that experience great. So it's all about that. There's a lot of buzz now about the word, 2 words, executive presence. And I study a lot in that area. Has anyone heard of that before, executive presence? It's a big buzzword. It really is about the fact of taking ownership for anything and having that way and having that gravitas, if you will. We have that, like grace under fire, so being cool, calm, and collected. We all have that opportunity when somebody walks in because when we are proud to be there, as we all are, and having a good time, we do this because we elect to be here. Isn't that true? They elect to come to our venue also. So I always keep that in mind. Again, simple things that mean a lot. Okay? R. What? Responsive? Being responsive, right, to the customer, right? Whatever they want. Absolutely right. Absolutely. No matter what anybody is, I always think about that. Something that I've always thought, and I know we all know this, respect, no matter who that person is or what, everyone deserves respect. Absolutely. Anything else you can think of for R? Remembering. Okay, so being able to remember so the next time they come back or something like that, we have an opportunity to remember. Anything else? I always say refer, right? Because as I said earlier, everyone has that universe of people that they know. How many of your friends have you introduced to the orchestra? Anybody in here? Great. Some of us? How many of us have the opportunity all the time just in conversation when people always say, where do you go? What do you do? And people sometimes don't know. Isn't it funny? They don't always know. And such an opportunity that we all have. So it's pretty simple when you think about all the different opportunities and touch points that we have at any one time. Something that I read is that something that I call the lifetime value of a customer. Okay, so I use this in another context, but I thought it actually worked well since I was going to have the opportunity to speak to all of you today. And it's about customer service and about how little things mean a big difference. So there was a woman who lived in a small city, and she used to go to this one store, and she went there every single week. However, one day she felt that she wasn't treated the way she would have liked by someone. Now, it could have been her perception, but it didn't matter because she was gone. And she left, and she didn't come back for 12 years. So then she came back 12 years later, and she went over to the owner. And she told her story about how she used to come every week, and she usually bought about $25 worth of things. This was a while ago, obviously, when things were $25, right? So, anyway, I love the story, though, because what happened is, after she left and he apologized, he went to his calculator, and he figured out that if she had continued to come every week for those 12 years, he still would have, the revenue that would have been lost was like $15,000. But what happened if she would have had great service? Somebody remembered the fact that she came every week. They smiled, they said hello, they knew her name, things like that. They helped her, just such basic things. She might have spent more. She might have referred all of her neighbors and her friends. And he figured that just from that one small interaction that somebody might not even know that caused anything, he probably lost over $75,000 in revenue. And I've thought about that because that story pertains to everything. Isn't it true? So it's pretty basic and pretty simple, but it's like a reminder of everything we've been talking about. And I came up with 5 things that our customers want from us. And we think of everybody that we know can be our customer. They want us to greet them, value them, help them, listen to them, and invite them back. And if you think about that, it all takes a simple amount of time to do that. So before I end, because like I said, I'm a good time manager, I know to end right on time. On the handout, I left think about what's one tip, idea, or an aha. And that's what I think it is with this group, that you all knew all these things already. But what one thing can you do to keep making an impact on being whether a friend, an usher, as I said, we're all ambassadors to the orchestra, and to make this even a more wonderful season than before. I don't know if anyone has any questions, but thank you so much. If anyone has a question, you can ask it now or just call me or email me or anything. Yes. Yes, absolutely. They want us to greet them, value them, help them, listen to them, and invite them to come back. Anything else? If not, I think we have usher training now, right? And thank you so much for having me.